Hashtag is always BOTTOMLINE AFRICA. And tonight, we want to begin with developments in Zimbabwe, where people on the streets of Harare are in agreement that the country's former president, Robert Mugabe, should be granted immunity from prosecution due to his age and role in fighting for the country's independence. Now, they say despite economic problems and political oppression that took place under his rule, he should be allowed to retire in peace. Though there were also calls for some kind of an apology or remorse from the former leader. Sources close to the negotiations say Mugabe has been granted from prosecution and assured that his safety will be protected in his home country. Mugabe, who resigned as president on Tuesday, is reported to have told negotiators he wanted to die in Zimbabwe and had no plans to live in exile.
I think that it is okay that the former president has been given immunity just because he has done a whole lot to liberate this country. In as much as he messed up in his last part, he does deserve a little bit of pain.
Considering Mugabe's age, she is about 93 years old, so he's an elder. So I think we should treat elders with some level of respect. Although he messed up, but he is still an elder.
Should come on TV and apologize maybe to the nation. There should be some form of remorse, so that people will feel justified and vindicated concerning what has been taking place in this nation.
Now, the International Monetary Fund says Zimbabwe must act quickly to dig its economy out of a hole and access international financial aid. Now, the country's incoming leader, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has pledged to grow the economy and provide jobs. The once a thriving economy is now seen as a regional basket case with swelling government spending and high foreign debt. Now, the country's opposition party Movement for Democratic Change says it was cautiously optimistic that a Mnangagwa presidency will not, quote-unquote, mimic and replicate the corrupt Mugabe regime. Zimbabwe's economy is half the size it was at the turn of the millennium. Mnangagwa's main challenge, as soon as he is sworn in tomorrow, will be to get the country out of economic red.
In our country, we want jobs in our country. I'm already receiving messages of cooperation and support for us to grow our economy.
Now, the chairman of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mohammed, has hailed what he terms as a happy ending reached in Zimbabwe. Now, Faki, who spoke after meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron at the LEC Palace earlier today in Paris, also confirmed the AU is taking measures to repatriate migrants stranded in Libya.
What's happening in Libya is abominable and has been condemned by the African Union, as the President of the African Union, Alpha Conde, expressed. We are taking practical and logistical measures to repatriate the migrants who are stranded in Libya and trying to return home. In Zimbabwe, things have happened and we've followed them, and I think there's been a happy ending. We should congratulate the fact that there's been no bloodshed. There are constitutional provisions in the country, and we are demanding that things happen within the legal framework. This is an opportunity to deepen democracy in a country whose people have expressed the most obvious need.
Meanwhile, Rwanda is willing to provide refuge to as many as 30,000 African migrants suffering abuse and slave-like conditions in Libya. Now, the country's foreign minister, Louis Mushikiwabo, says the government has entered into discussions to see how to help in welcoming migrants held captive in Libya. Now, the African Union has added its voice to the outrage. They greeted footage last week of African migrants being auctioned at a slave market in Libya. And on Tuesday, AU Commission Chairman Musa Faki Mohammed called on African countries to help. Mushi Kiwabo told AFP that Rwanda, like the rest of the world, was horrified by the images of the tragedy currently unfolding in Libya, where African men, women and children who were on the road to exile have been held and turned into slaves. Well, just to tell me on that developing story in Rwanda is my colleague based in Kigali, Rwanda, Eugene Anango. Eugene, good evening. We've seen that development there, Rwanda willing to take, to give home to about 30,000 migrants from Libya. So many people are asking this. Is this just a good gesture from Kagame and by extension Rwanda, or is it a political move? Is it a humanitarian move? What exactly informed that decision by Paul Kagame?
Yusuf, what has happened as far as Rwanda making this very bold decision is out of what Rwanda went through during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis, a time when the rest of the world turned their eyes and faces away from Rwanda as millions of Tutsis were killed. And so Rwanda says that, no, we will not sit back and watch our fellow Africans face this dehumanizing kind of acts that happen in Libya. So Rwanda deciding to make this move is basically as a result of knowing and understanding what it went through when the world turned a blind eye to this country, when it needed the world to actually say something about it.
Yes, Eugene,
so
clearly,
a moral issue.
Mm-hmm. Clearly, this is a bold move from the Rwandan government, but of concern from a section of Kagame critics. They're saying Rwanda has had its own fair share of problem with the Burundian refugees and those from DRC apparently. So, will this add more problems to the refugee problem in Rwanda?
Yusuf, Rwanda, as I said earlier on, did this before, as you said it. I mean, hosted over 50,000 Burundians who fled their country, came to Rwanda, and they lived at the refugee camps, some of them at the Mahama refugee camp, which was home to over, 30,000 Burundian refugees. And Rwanda went ahead to even build, permanent residence for some of them who are not able to go back to their countries. So, it seems that Rwanda doesn't want to care about, what Burundi will say or what any other person will say, but just playing that moral, obligation that when history judges the world, Rwanda wants to be on the right side of history and say that, at least we offered to do something, at least we did not sit back, at least we did not close our eyes and turn our backs against our fellow Africans who what those Libyans and other Africans, those Africans are going through in Libya, Yusuf.
A horrific development there in Libya. One final question, Eugene. Is it the Rwandan government who is going to, cater for the expense of these about 30,000 refugees, or do we expect to see the United Nations also jumping in?
As we speak, Yusuf, Rwanda has extended, a call for support from the African Union Commission to see how, the extent of the implication of cost implication and how best to intervene is concerned. The country has also worked towards reaching out to the private sector organizations and non-governmental organizations to see the cost implication and how it can actually come in. But as we speak, of course, the cost is not yet clear on how much, but through the African Union Commission, the private sector bodies and non-governmental organizations, Rwanda says it will work towards working together with them and also playing a coordinating role with those countries and institutions and individuals who want to come in and work and are like-minded with Rwanda so that they can, offer solutions to those who are facing this particular crisis. So
Eugene,
not going to be Rwanda alone going by there.
Yes, Eugene, what are Rwandans saying about this development? Are they happy to welcome these refugees?
Not most of them are actually, versed with exactly what's really going on and the cost implication of how it will affect the economy of the country. But they look at it as a goodwill, and it makes them proud as a country and say that, we are ready to play that, humanitarian role to support our brothers and sisters and fellow children who are going through what is happening in Libya today. So
I'm sure.
most of them,
Yes.
who it doesn't affect directly, don't really care much about it. But for those who are following closely this information, they really feel proud to be Rwandan and having given an opportunity for others to, to be treated well as it is required.
I'm sure the African Union and by extension Africans are very proud of Rwanda there. Many thanks, Eugene, for that update. That was my colleague Eugene Anangwe coming to us all the way from Kigali, Rwanda. Now, Sudanese President Omar Hassan al-Bashir, who is wanted by the International Criminal Court for genocide and war crimes, has asked Russia's Vladimir Putin to protect his country from the United States. Now, speaking during his first visit to Russia as president, Bashir also said he wanted to ramp up military ties and praised Moscow's military campaign in Syria. Now, the visit came a month after the United States lifted a trade embargo it imposed on the impoverished African state in 1997 over Khartoum's alleged backing of Islamist militant groups. Take a look.
The Americans succeeded in dividing Sudan in two states, and they are working on dividing it even more. Sudan needs protection from American aggression. The Americans are in fact responsible for what's happening in Syria. Our stand on Syria is the same as the Russians. Even without coordination, our stand is that there can be no peace in Syria without President Bashar al-Assad. Had Russia not gotten involved in Syria, the country would have been lost.
That will set another stage for geopolitics. Now, Angola's ambassador to Tanzania has called for the former Angolan president, Jose Eduardo dos Santos, to be prosecuted for crimes allegedly committed during his 38-year rule. Ambrosio Lukoki said dos Santos should resign as leader of the governing MPLA party as he was using this position to avoid prosecution. Now, Angola's new president, Jose Lourenço, recently sacked the heads of police and intelligence services, sidestepping a law that he will not do so for 8 years. He also sacked Dos Santos' billionaire daughter as head of the state oil company. Lorenzo, nicknamed JLO, was handpicked by Dos Santos to stand in elections in August, and the Time analyst expected him to maintain the status quo.
Eu quero ouvir os assobios, não parem, agitem mais. E agita, salva os chapéus, as bandeiras, agita, 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 agita.
Now, organizers of the Dakar Rally say the annual event will not return to Africa soon as terrorism and civil war on the continent make the world's toughest endurance race a security nightmare. Now, the race has been staged in South America since 2009 after the previous year's event was cancelled at the last minute because of fears over security in Mauritania. The 40th anniversary of the Dakar takes place next year, with Peru returning to the schedule for the first time since the year 2013. The return to the country after a 5-year absence has filled competitors with nervous excitement as the nation reopens the doors to its extensive desert plains.
%90 of the people who take part in the Dakar know they won't win. They take part in order to finish the race. It's really a test of where to aim to finish in the 14th day of competition. Even if you arrived late or start early, that's the challenge, making it to the end. It was like that in 1978, and it's still like that in 2018. Our return to Africa is sadly not on the card because of extremely complex geopolitical situation, terrorism, latent conflicts, and ongoing conflicts in Mali, Niger, and Chad. It's complicated. There are regions that are subject to tension because of extremely high level of security, so we'll have to let a bit of time pass before we can even start imagining holding the events in these regions. It won't happen tomorrow.
Very unfortunate that that rally is not coming to Africa anytime soon. And that report takes us to a very short break, but Bottom Line will return after this very short break. Don't go too far, and we'll return with much more, including a studio discussion tonight, which has everything to do with the youth agenda. Of course, this conversation has been set because of the upcoming East Africa Youth Summit set to be held in Arusha, Tanzania. I'm sure it's a conversation you don't want to miss. Stay with us.